We are very honored today to have Associate Professor Dr. Nasha Khaw, Rodziadi Khaw, coming, to spend some time with us to speak on a very exciting topic. In the past 20, 30 years, we have been looking at the history of Malaysia from a kind of fixated kind of perspective. A lot of things were on the Malacca, dates from Malacca, but today with the new archaeological findings at Batu Mas, Sungai Dua, Sungai Mas, and also at Bukit Choras, we are now looking at quite a lot of very exciting findings that may help us to relook into the way we look at history, Malaysian history. So today, we are very honored to have Dr. Nasha Khaw, a very well-trained archaeologist. He has done a lot of work at Bukit Choras and giving new meaning, new readings to the entire archaeological projects of Malaysia. And we all know that he is the Deputy Director of the Center for Global Archaeological Research at USM. And this is the leading school that is doing archaeology work in Malaysia. So this talk is part of our talk series, and we will have a series of talks in the coming months. And we hope you will be able to join us when we send out invitation. But we also hope that you will be able to sign up as a member of the Royal Aesthetic Society. If you need some help, you can actually go to our website. The form is online. You can actually do that. So I think without further much ado, we will pass the time over to Professor Nasha Khaw. Please, Prof.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Denny, and it is a great pleasure for me to participate in your lecture series. Since the mid-19th century CE, among the first scholars who conducted studies in the Bujang Valley, they were affiliated with the Royal Aesthetic Society. Okay, and until the early 90s, most of the works in the Bujang Valley was actually published in MBRAS. Most of the works. So it is great to reconnect with you guys after many, many years of hiatus. Yeah. Okay. So for the past few years, the archaeological research team in University Science Malaysia has adopted new methodological approach towards archaeology, where we had new insights regarding the political structure, the socio-economic condition, and the cultural diffusion in Ancient Kedah. So for today, I hope that I can be able to present a bit regarding our recent findings in Bujang Valley, our new interpretations, and the result of our excavations in the Bukit Choras Archaeological Complex. Now, first of all, we see that Ancient Kedah is one of the many polities which emerged in the coastal areas of the Malay archipelago somewhere between the 2nd to the 14th century CE. It is by no means the only polity which developed during the area. So other polities which emerged alongside with Ancient Kedah included Langkasuka, Tambralingga. For instance, in northern Sumatra, we have Lamuri, and then we have Kota China, Barus, Jambi, Palembang, Santubong, and Okyo. So somewhere between the 2nd to the 14th century CE, due to the emergence of long-distance trade, due to the economic spillover from the trade of China in India, it led to the socio-economic transformation on the coastal societies in the area. And Ancient Kedah is one of the many polities which developed in the area. Now, many would view Ancient Kedah, I think at least until the late 90s, people would view Ancient Kedah as a centralized polity, as a Hindu-Buddhist kingdom. But based on our research, it appears that Ancient Kedah was not centralized at all. We now view Ancient Kedah as a network or confederation of coastal and riverine polities located on the northwest coast of the Thai Malay Peninsula. Okay, and each polity was possibly autonomous, and they would have their own cultural features. And the process of Indianization, it was not a homogeneous process. Different communities would have their own different level of acceptance towards Indian culture. And within the framework of Ancient Kedah, there were several coastal settlements. For instance, we have Krabi, Trang, Satun, Perlis, Bujang Valley, and Kuala Senising. And from the 6th century CE onwards, we believe that Bujang Valley was the economic and cultural center of Ancient Kedah. So we should view Ancient Kedah as a collection of coastal communities with the economic center located in the Bujang Valley. And we know Bujang Valley functioned as the economic center of Ancient Kedah based on the sheer number of archaeological sites that we have here, which is around 184 archaeological sites. So it is a lot more as compared to other coastal societies which was federated within this network of settlements for Ancient Kedah. Now, based on our most current survey, we have documented around 184 archaeological sites. And these archaeological sites, they are extremely diverse in their nature. So we discovered sites related to Hindu and Buddhist rituals. We discovered exchange sites where international trade took place. We discovered iron smelting sites. We discovered big making sites. So we also discovered lots and lots of ornaments. So we can see that the complexity, the diversity of archaeological remains in the Bujang Valley showed that it was a culturally complex area. There were lots of economic activities happening in the area. And we can see that most of the archaeological sites in the Bujang Valley were concentrated to the south of Gunung Jerai. And that was due to one reason only. Based on our most recent research, it appears that most of the paddy fields and the swamp, the mangroves that we see in the Bujang Valley was in fact underwater. So it appears that before the 14th century CE, the sea level was slightly higher. And because of that, Ancient Kedah was in fact a large bay. Okay, it was a large protected bay. And you can see the yellow outline, that was in fact the ancient coastline of Bujang Valley. So it was a big bay and it was surrounded by smaller islands. And most of the archaeological sites were located along the coastline of the ancient bay. Okay, so we can see that the archaeological sites, they are distributed in three main areas. Number one, in the Sungai Bujang area. Number two, in the Sungai Batu area. And number three, in the Sungai Muda area. And to the west of the bay, we have several islands. So for instance, we have over here Bukit Putri, Bukit Meriam, and Bukit Penjara. And this island protected the bay from strong winds. So that is why Ancient Kedah was so important, because it had the favorable coastal configuration. And at the same time, we have the Gunung Jerai over here, which became the natural landmark for sailors. You know, coming from far, they could be able to view the bay. And also we have the Muda River over here, which connects the coastal area with the interior of the Thai Malay Peninsula, which we know is very rich with rainforest products. So they were able to transport all the commodities from the inland to the coastal areas. At the same time, in Sungai Batu, there was an abundance of iron ore. Okay, and also there was also an abundance of fresh water. So it has all the characteristics for the development of a natural port. So that's why Ancient Kedah became so important, because of its geography as well as its location at the entrance of the Strait of Malacca. And when we did the reconstruction of the paleo environment, this is how Bujang Valley once looked like before the lowering of the sea level. So it was a large bay, they had several rivers, and most of the archaeological sites were concentrated along the ancient bay. Okay, and that is how we are able to reconstruct the settlement pattern, the cultural dynamics, and the socio-economy of Ancient Kedah by synchronizing between the archaeological findings with the paleo environment, by interpreting and contextualizing the archaeological records with the paleo environment at the same time. Okay. Now, Ancient Kedah did not appear out of nowhere. Okay, we know that ancient Kedah started to be mentioned in Indian records somewhere in the 2nd century CE. But the emergence of ancient Kedah was the culmination of lots of events which were happening since the 4th century CE. The emergence of ancient Kedah had a lot to do with the shift of geopolitics. It had to do with the shift of trade pattern and trade route and sailing technology. And based on our comparative studies with archaeological data discovered in southern Thailand, we managed to get some insight on how the regional development synchronizes with the development of ancient Kedah. We managed to contextualize the emergence of ancient Kedah with the chronology of economic development in the region. And this is what we found. It appears that the chronology of trans-Asiatic trade in the Malay archipelago actually happened in three periods. Number one, we have the first contact, which is between the 4th century BC until the 2nd century AD. And then we have the first phase of development between the 3rd century AD until the 6th century AD. And then finally, we have the second phase of development between the 7th to the 9th century AD. Now, we can see from the map over here, during the first contact, between the local coastal settlements with the outside world, it happened somewhere in the 4th century BC, and most of the economic center were located near to the Kra Isthmus. Okay, and then after the 3rd century CE, the economic center started to shift towards the south, and Bujang Valley was actually one of the ports which developed during this time. And finally, from the 7th century CE onwards, the sites located to the south, to the north started to be abandoned, and the archaeological sites, the settlement located to the south started to develop to become an economic center. And this has a lot to do with the interface between China, India, and the Mediterranean world. Now, before the 4th century BC, even before the arrival of the Indian and Chinese traders, we already have evidence for the interaction between late prehistoric communities who lived in the coastal areas of Indochina with the Thai Malay Peninsula. And this is based on the discovery of few prehistoric artifacts coming from the Bronze culture and Neolithic culture, in the Kra Isthmus. However, by the 4th century BC, we saw the establishment of the Indo-Roman trade by the Mauryas, by the Mauryan Empire, and it was followed by the Shungas and the Satavahana dynasty as well as the Kushans. And by the 1st century BC, trade started to establish between the Indian, the Mediterranean world with the Han dynasty. And from this establishment, it led to the pan-Asiatic trade, especially in the coastal fringes of the maritime Southeast Asia. And this had been proven from the recent archaeological findings that we have near the Kra Isthmus. Okay, the archaeological findings, they included the Neolithic culture stone adzes. Okay, this one, they are locally produced material. We also discovered Dongson culture bronze drum, and this one actually came from an Indochina, but we discovered them in the Thai Malay Peninsula. We also discovered some Sahian earrings, also came from Indochina, but we discovered them in the Thai Malay Peninsula. So it showed that before the 4th century BC, there were already interaction between the coastal communities of the late prehistoric people. So these people, they were already used to the process of trade, even prior to the arrival of the Indian and Chinese traders. However, the most important things that we discovered in Khao Samgyo site, located in the Kra Isthmus, are the Mauryan seals. Those are the seals written in the Mauryan Brahmi script, which can be dated from the 4th to the 3rd century BC. They also discovered some Kushan coins and Indian hardstone carvings, which can be dated from the 3rd century BC. So it showed that the Thai Malay Peninsula already had some connection, has some connectivity with the Indian subcontinent, even around the 4th to the 3rd century BC, but the trade was pretty much focused only to the north of the Kra Isthmus. They have also discovered some Roman artifacts. For instance, the Roman intaglios, we discovered Roman coins coming from the period of Antoninus Pius and Domitian, and lots of Roman beads. And aside from the Roman object, they also discovered artifacts from the Han dynasty. Okay, for instance, they have the Han seals, they have the Han decorated pottery, and also Han glassware. So it appears that by the 4th century BC until the 2nd century AD, the area around the Kra Isthmus, especially the sites of Pukau Tong, Khao Samgyo, Khao Sak, they started to be engaged, okay, with other economic and cultural hubs in the region, especially with China, India, and the Mediterranean world. Okay, it appears that while the local prehistoric communities were interacting with each other, the arrival of foreign traders had led to the economic development, had led to the socio-economic shift in the area. Okay, now a big change happened somewhere in the 3rd to the 6th century BC, 6th century AD. We saw that the sites located towards the north of the Kra Isthmus, it started to decline. Okay, and we saw the emergence of new archaeological sites, of new settlement sites to the south of the Malay Peninsula, especially those located in Chaya, Nakhon Sitamarat, and Takwapa. And one of the most important sites which emerged during this period is Ancient Kedah. Yeah, and during this time, somewhere between the 3rd to the 6th century CE, what happened that there was a diminished trade with China. There was some political problem in China after the fall of the Han dynasty. So we saw also during this time the predominance of India, especially under the Guptas and Pallavas. So it is during this time that the Indian influence started to become very intense. There was an intensified trade between the Malay archipelago with India. And we can see that during this time also, there was an intense process of urbanization, technological exchange, and also cultural diffusion between the local society with the outside world. And the emergence of the coastal settlements after the 3rd century AD had a lot to do with the change of trade route, and this was affected by the emergence of the direct sailing method. And we can see over here, before the 2nd century CE, which is 4th century BC until 2nd century CE, the sailing method that people use, they use the coast hugging method. And by using this method, they would avoid sailing into the open sea, and they would just sail near to the coastline. And by using this method, they would just sail along the Indian coast, and then through the Arakan coast into the Mergui archipelago, and they are going to stop at the Kra Isthmus. They would cross over through the Kra Isthmus into the Bay of Siam before direct to China. And during this time, they don't really use the Strait of Malacca. And this is due to the fact that their understanding regarding the monsoon pattern was quite limited. And during this time, that is why most of the archaeological sites were focused in these areas, along the Kra Isthmus. And this is where we discovered all the Roman coins and the Mauryan seals and the Han period ceramics and seals. Okay, so it was due to the sailing method, and the sailing method actually dictated the location of the trade route. However, between the 3rd to the 6th century CE, we saw that the coastal societies in Asia, they started to understand the monsoon pattern, and they were able to develop a direct sailing method. And by using the direct sailing method, the traders coming from the east coast of India can be able to cross the Bay of Bengal straight into the Strait of Malacca. And by using this trade route, we can see that they no longer use the coastal ports in the northern part of the Malay Peninsula, but they were focusing more on the southern part of the Malay Peninsula. And this is when we started to see the emergence of coastal sites to the south, and one of them being Ancient Kedah. So I see that the emergence of Ancient Kedah had a lot to do with the changes of sailing technology, and the changes of sailing technology had led to the emergence of port located on the new trade route. And it is during this period that we can see that artifacts from after the 2nd or 3rd century started to be discovered in these areas. We discovered Gupta period seals, beads and animal-shaped pendants, and as well as imported beads. And it is also during this time that there was an intense technological transfer from India into the coastal societies in ancient Kedah. So it is during this period that the local community started to learn from the Indians on how to make beads. They also learned how to smelt iron, and this has led to the emergence of local industries in the area, as evident from the discovery of mass-produced local beads in Kedah, as well as in other archaeological sites in Takwapa, in Thailand. So this is among the earliest archaeological finding that we have in Ancient Kedah. Number one, we have the Sungai Mas number 1 inscription. So we can see it is an image of a stupa surrounded by inscription written in the Pallava script, which contained a Yete mantra, which can be dated around the 6th century CE. And this is another fragment of a Buddha head, which shows Anuradhapura influence, which is Sri Lanka. And it is not surprising at all, because when you look at the trade route after the 3rd, 4th century CE, Sri Lanka is directly connected with Kedah through this direct sailing method. And it is also during this very period, also we can see the emergence of lots and lots of Buddhist artifacts in the Bujang Valley. And this is the Buddha Gupta inscription, which shows the image of a stupa surrounded by inscription written in the Pallava script. So these are among the earliest inscriptions, earliest artifacts that we discover in the Bujang Valley. All can be dated around the 5th to the 6th century CE. This is another statue which can be affiliated with the Gupta style, 5th to 6th century CE, and another inscription found in Cherak Tokun, also dated around the 5th to 6th century CE. So we can see that during this period, 5th, 6th century CE, coastal societies started to emerge, and the emergence are proven through the discoveries of these archaeological findings. Now, and one of the most significant discoveries that we have in the Bujang Valley is the Sungai Batu Archaeological Complex, where we discovered immense number of archaeological sites which can be related to the iron smelting activities. And the iron smelting activities, it used the Blue Mary method. Okay, Blue Mary method, it actually originated from India, and it was adopted by the local community by using the local raw material. Okay, and we discovered dozens of iron smelting sites in the Sungai Batu complex. And along with the aside from the iron smelting site, we also discovered lots and lots of bead making workshops in the sites of Kampung Sungai Mas. So it appears that from the period of 5th to 6th century CE, due to the shift of trade route, ancient Kedah become very important, especially owing to the development, political, economical, and cultural development of India. And during that time, China was not yet quite significant because of the political problems in the area. So the trade in the area between the 3rd to the 6th century CE were more oriented towards India. Okay, because that was the period of Indian cultural achievements. Now, a big shift happened after the 7th century CE. Okay, now aside from trading with the Indians, we saw the rise of the Tang dynasty in the 7th century CE. And the Tang dynasty managed to unify most part of China, and they started to focus on long distance trade. And aside from trading by using the overland trade route, they also use the maritime route. And this has led to the first boom of trade, the first development of trade in the Bujang Valley. Before the 7th century CE, the trade with the outside world by Kedah was mostly focused to India. But after the 7th century CE, with the emergence of the Tang dynasty, with the economic development of Tang dynasty, it led to the economic development of Kedah also. So we can see during this time, the Chinese traders started to arrive in ancient Kedah. And during this very period, we also saw the rise of the Pala and Pallava kingdom. They were also important economic and cultural centers. And we also see the decline of the sites of Pukautong, Tachana, Klongtom, and the rise of the polities in the south. So finally, the sites which were located to the north of the Thai Malay Peninsula, they started to be abandoned, and the real economic center became Ancient Kedah because of its location. So the rise of the Tang dynasty, the rise of the Pala dynasty, and the Pallava kingdom. So we can see the rise of these big economy centers, and it led to the economic spillover into this area. So, and this is proven from the numerous archaeological findings that we have in the Bujang Valley. Okay, so aside from Ancient Kedah, we also have other economic centers such as Takwapa, Chaya, Nakhon Sitamarat, Patani, as well as Jambi and Palembang. So from the 7th century CE onward, we saw the rise of Srivijayan Empire, and Ancient Kedah become one of the many economic centers for Srivijayan Empire. So it is during this period that we saw the rise of complex societies in the maritime Southeast Asia, and the emergence of major economic hubs like Ancient Kedah. Okay, and within Ancient Kedah, we can see something quite different as compared to the agrarian communities in Java and Indochina, and I'm going to explain that later. Okay, so these are among the artifacts that we discovered. This was excavated by Quaritch Wales in 1937, and it is reported to be Tang mirror, or the mirror from the Tang dynasty. They also discovers lots of Hindu and Buddhist sites. Okay, and the real economic development in ancient Kedah happened somewhere in the 11th century CE. Okay, in the 11th century ECE, we saw the rise of the Sung dynasty. And the thing about the Sung dynasty is, the Sung dynasty was cut off from the overland Silk Road, and they had to focus their trade on the maritime route. And during this very period, the 11th century CE, ancient Kedah became the real economic center when we discovered lots of trade dumps containing thousands of pieces of Sung period ceramic. Okay, so we can say that the peak of development for ancient Kedah as a center of trade happened during the Sung dynasty. Yeah, and during the very same period, we saw the rise of the Chola Empire as a maritime power. So the interaction between the Sung dynasty and the Chola Empire, as well as Srivijaya, had led to the economic development of ancient Kedah. So ancient Kedah became part of the Confederation of Srivijaya. It was an economic center, and we also see the rise of other urban centers in the coastal areas of the maritime Southeast Asia, such as Kota Chinal, Barus, Tambragliga, Patani, Jambi, and Palembang. But we have the highest diversity of archaeological findings that we have is actually in ancient Kedah, where we have high concentration of archaeological sites within a very small area. Okay. Now, so these are the archaeological findings that we have. So to date, 184 archaeological sites, and 50 to 60 of them consisted of Hindu and Buddhist sites. Yeah. So these are among the pieces which had been excavated before this. And aside from Chinese ceramics, we also discovered, for instance, this one. These are the Greece pottery from Middle East. We have South Asian pottery, as well as Middle Eastern glasses. Okay. Now, before this, most scholars would view ancient Kedah as a centralized Indianized polity. But based on our most recent studies, it appears that ancient Kedah was not centralized at all. It appears to have been a confederation or network of coastal and riverine settlements, where each settlement would have their own specific economic functions. Based on our remote sensing mapping in the area of Bujang Valleys, it appears that the archaeological sites in the Bujang Valley, they are concentrated in three main areas. Number one is in the area of Sungai Muda. Number two, the area of Sungai Bujang, and number three in Sungai Batu. And for each river, they would have two elements of settlement. Number one, the economic center, and number two, we have the settlement centers. The economic centers are usually located at the estuary of the ancient river, and the settlement centers they are located upriver. And we can see that most of the economic activities happen at the estuary of the ancient rivers. Now, for Sungai Muda, I believe that that is the economic center for Ancient Kedah because that is the biggest river which connects the coastal area with the interior of the time Malay Peninsula. And then number two, we have Sungai Bujang, which function as one of the port, and Sungai Batu, which function as the iron smelting site. So we are going to look at one by one, of the different centers of settlement in the Bujang Valley. Number one, the Sungai Bujang complex. So it appears that Sungai Bujang, as the Sungai Muda complex, it appears that Sungai Muda is one of the major river in the Bujang Valley because it is the longest river and it kind of connects the coastal areas in the west coast of the Thai Malay Peninsula with the east coast through the Yarang River. So we can say that the Muda River and the Yarang River, they were connected. And the Yarang River is where Langkasuka was located, in fact. So the paleo estuary of the Muda River, it flows into the southern part of the ancient bay. So the bay is over here, and this is the paleo estuary, and this is where we discovered the Sungai Mas archaeological complex, where we discovered lots of trade dumps, lots of Hindu and Buddhist sites, and lots of workshop for making beads. And when we go upriver, we can see that few Hindu and Buddhist sites dispersed over large areas. So this is the economic center, and this is where the settlement centers are located. Okay, so it appears that the economic function of Sungai Muda settlement, number one, possibly it was a center for the collection of rainforest products. Number two, the center for bead making. And number three, it became also the center for trade, where we discovered lots of trade wares. And within this area, there were at least 3 exchange sites. We have Kampung Sungai Mas, Kampung Simpul Tabang, and Kampung Sireh. So there were 3 ports located at the estuary of the Muda River. Okay, so we can see that Sungai Muda is one of the major settlements located within the Bujang Valley. And then number two, we have the Sungai Bujang complex. Okay, Sungai Muda is located to the south, but to the north, we have the Sungai Bujang complex. So this is the coastline for the ancient bay, and this is the estuary of the Bujang River, and where we discovered most of the trade dumps. Okay, we discovered lots of Hindu and Buddhist sites, as well as ceramics. Lots and lots of ceramic coming from China, India, and the Middle East. Okay, so while Sungai Muda were able to produce their own products, they produce beads, but it appears that Sungai Bujang only functioned as a center for trade. So this is where traders would settle, where we discovered lots of Hindu and Buddhist sites at the upper reaches of the Bujang River. And the Sungai Bujang, it functioned as a center for trade, and we have high complexity, high diversity of archaeological remains. We have Hindu and Buddhist sites, we have trade wares, we have ornaments, So when we look at the Hindu and Buddhist site, it appears like they were being built by different groups of people coming from different cultural backgrounds. Okay, and why Sungai Bujang became the center of trade? Because of the geography. Gunung Jerai is located to the north, and at the coastal areas, we had a sandy beach. Okay, so sandy beach is very good for the development of a port. And finally, we have the Sungai Batu complex. So the Sungai Batu complex was not really, did not really function as a center for trade, but it was a center for iron production. And why that area was chosen as a center for iron production? Because there were lots of iron deposit nearby the area. So the economic center was located at the ancient coastal areas, and then the iron ore came from the surrounding area. Okay, in this Sungai Batu complex, it functioned only as the iron smelting site. So when we look at Bujang Valley as a whole, we have 3 different settlements. Each settlement would have their own specific economic functions, and they also show some distinct cultural features. So we should no longer view Ancient Kedah as a homogeneous pot, a single pot with homogeneous culture or with single economy, but it is an area with different settlement, with diverse economic sectors. And I believe that each settlement within the Bujang Valley could have had their own rulers. They could have had their own administrators, and they collaborated one another in terms of trade or economic activities. But as far as politics is concerned, maybe they are also autonomous. Okay. Now, when we look at the society of Ancient Kedah as a whole, it appears that there are three main settlements with specific economic features. And as far as the society is concerned, there were coastal, there were riverine, and there were hinterland settlements within the Bujang Valley. And aside from indigenous communities, there were also communities of traders, pilgrims, and these people, the traders and pilgrims, they may have to stay in the Bujang Valley for at least 6 months while waiting for monsoonal change. So we have communities possibly of Indian background, Chinese, Southeast Asian, as well as Arab, living alongside with the indigenous population. And when we speak about the indigenous population, there are different segments of the indigenous population. There were those living in the coastal areas, and there were those living in the hinterland. And those living in the coastal areas, there were also two types, the orang laut as well as the merchant aristocrats and local rulers who were integrated with the foreign traders. So the settlements located outside the economic centers, they were not so much influenced by the Hindu and Buddhist religion. And such is evident from our distribution of archaeological sites. We can see that almost all of the Hindu and Buddhist sites, they are only located in the coastal areas. Only in the coastal areas. But when we go upriver, in the Muda River, not a single Hindu and Buddhist sites. And when we go outside the Bujang Valley to other parts of Kedah, we don't find a single Hindu and Buddhist site. And it appears that most of the Hindu and Buddhist sites that we have in the Bujang Valley were built to cater for the need of the traders. However, maybe a small number of them were built by the local chieftains or the merchant aristocrats, who were influenced by the Hindu and Buddhist religion. So it appears that when it comes to the indigenous society in the Bujang Valley, different communities would have different level of acceptance towards Indian culture. That is, we need to be clear about that. So Ancient Kedah was not entirely Indianized. So the process of Indianization is not even. It is a very uneven process. It is a process of cultural negotiation instead of a direct Indianization. So that is one important thing that we discover during our archaeological findings. And now, in terms of the economy of Ancient Kedah, Ancient Kedah functioned as a port industry with multiple economic functions. Aside from catering for long distance trade, Ancient Kedah also functioned as a center for production of local goods. And among the local goods that they produce is number one, iron. They also produce pottery. They also produce beads. Okay, so for iron and beads, they use Indian technology, but for pottery, those are local technology. It also became the center of long distance trade, and also due to its geography, they were also able to produce rainforest products. So the economy of Ancient Kedah was extremely diverse. So if I am going to summarize what I know about Ancient Kedah in 3 words, number one is multiculturalism. Because Ancient Kedah was a metropolitan. So we have traders and sailors coming from different backgrounds. We had Indian, Chinese, Southeast Asian traders, so they lived together. So it was really a multicultural society. And number two, diversity. The economy, the culture in Ancient Kedah is so diverse. It appears that there is no such thing as an Ancient Kedah art because different temples were built by different groups of people. We can see temples showing Indian influence. We can see temples showing Japanese or Indo-Chinese influence. And there are also temples which were built through the hybridization of Indian culture with local technology. So different temples were built by different communities, and some were also built by the local communities. So it is case-to-case basis, and we should not paint the whole area with the same color. Okay. Now, okay, most of our interpretations regarding the chronology of Ancient Kedah, regarding the cultural features, regarding the economy, regarding the political structure were based on archaeological site which had already been excavated before the year 2006. And the problem with the previous excavation in Ancient Kedah they were not very scientific, and it was due to their technology in that time. So with the current development of technology, we are focusing more on the micro evidences. We don't just do archaeological research to expose archaeological sites, where we are trying to give meaning to the archaeological finding by contextualizing them with the local environment, with climate, with the regional development. So when we do our research, we look at the environment also. So when we do our digging, we take soil samples and we try to run some scientific analysis to determine the temperature at that time, the kind of fauna that we had, the kind of paleocoastline that we had, so that we can have a deeper insight regarding the context of the archaeological finding. And in the year 2023, by using this new archaeological approach, we conducted the Bukit Choras Archaeological Project. Now, what attracted me to conduct research in Bukit Choras was in 2015 or 2016. I came across this manuscript which had been digitized by the Cambridge University. And inside this manuscript, there is a special passage which mentioned Katahadipe, Valavati Parvate, Lokanata, meaning the god Lokanata living in the mountain of the Kedah Islands. Okay, Katahadipa means the islands of Kedah. And you see, when we look at this, they call Kedah, instead of a port, they call it the islands of Kedah. And this is not surprising at all, because when we look at the paleo environment of ancient Kedah in ancient times, ancient Kedah was in fact a bay surrounded by islands. And they say inside the manuscript, in the mountains of the islands of Kedah, so on top of these high elevation areas, there could be archaeological sites. And based on the studies by Wales, it had already been proven for most of the high elevation areas, we would find archaeological sites there. So I chose to conduct my research in the Bukit Choras archaeological site. Okay. So this is the Bukit Choras archaeological site. It is located to the north of Gunung Jerai. It is one of the isolated sites. We can see that almost 100% of the archaeological sites in the Bujang Valley were located to the south of Gunung Jerai, near to the economic center, while Bukit Choras is located away from the economic center. It stood by itself to the north. So that is quite bizarre, why it is so isolated. So the site was first reported by James Lau in the Journal of Royal Aesthetic Society, and and then by the year 1937, Quaritch Whale conducted a trial digging in the area. Okay, now look at this map. We have the three main complexes, the three main settlements of Bujang Valley. Over here we have Sungai Bujang, Sungai Muda, Sungai Batu, and Bukit Choras is located over here. And when we go further to the south, this is where Cherak Tok Kun is located. So we can see that for ancient Kedah, it consisted of knots of coastal settlements. You see? So we have the main economic centers in the Bujang Valley. To the north, we have Bukit Choras, and to the south, we have Cherak Tok Kun. So that's why I say that we should view ancient Kedah as a collection of coastal and riverine settlements. So this is the new thing that we are proposing. Anyway, our first phase of excavation between August 2023 to June 2024, the main purpose of this excavation was to expose the western portion of the site, to study the building material, and to determine the dating of the site. Okay, because before before our excavation, no intensive research had been done in the site. So we are not sure regarding the architectural features or the layout of the site. So the first phase was just to expose the site so that we can have some understanding regarding what was available underneath the sediment. So this is the drone image of the site before excavation. Okay, this is in August 2023. Okay, it does not look very convincing, just like there's nothing there. And we divided the phases of our excavation. So it is Bukit Choras, there are actually two mounds. We have mound number 1 over here and mound number 2. So we believe that there were two temples, you know, one mound constitute one temple. Okay. So,
sorry, I think someone's microphone is on. Would you be able to mute yourself?
okay.
I think it's okay now. Sorry about that.
Okay. So there are two mounds at the top of Bukit Choras, at the summit of Bukit Choras. So there is mount number 1 and mount number 2. So the first phase of my excavation is to focus on the mount, the biggest mount, mount number 1. So before we conducted the excavation, we had to clear the site first. Okay, so we did the clearing all by ourselves. There were thick bushes, you know, so we had to cut down the trees. We had to set up, pitch up the tent and everything. So me and my students and my staff, we did them by ourselves. And then we started digging. Okay, so this is the excavation process. This is the mound before excavation. So it appears to have been a disturbed site. You can see a big hole in the middle. You can see one more trenches at the side. So from the first look at the mound, you won't be so convinced that the site is still well preserved, because quarried whales mentioned that James Stark already dug the site before, and we know that Quaritch will also dig the site, but he did not produce a very complete report. So we were under the impression that this is already a disturbed site and nothing is left. So we just took our chance, and we still wanted to conduct the excavation just to be sure, you know. But when we started excavating, then it appears to have been a well-preserved site. So we just hit the jackpot lah, okay? So this is one of the best preserved Buddhist site that we have in the Bujang Valley. And the most important thing is that along with the structural remains, we also discovered other artifacts which are undisturbed and which are complete and in the right assemblage. Okay, so when we look at the architecture of the Bukit Choras site, it shows some architectural resemblance with those discovered in eastern India, yeah, in the sites of Ratnagiri and Udayagiri. So we have the basement of a stupa. For each cardinal point, there is a projected niche, and within the projected niche, there is a Buddha image sitting in a meditative position. And for this kind of architectural feature, we only found it in Eastern India. Okay, and okay, this is a structure, and the most important discovery is the statues. Okay, for more than 1 century of research in the Bujang Valley, most of the statues discovered in the Bujang Valley, they are out of context material. Okay, before the 1970s, the excavation of archaeological sites in the Bujang Valley were not well documented. You know, they didn't give a complete report regarding the depth of the discovery, the context, and everything. So we managed to conduct a more scientific excavation, and this is the first statue that we discovered. So this is at the southern part of the structure. We discovered it is incomplete, but it is in the right position. So a Buddha statue sitting on a lotus throne, and next to the statue is a votive tablet. So this piece of clay stone is carved with an image of a stupa, and near to the statue we discovered Sanskrit inscription with pottery shards. So the assemblage is perfect. Okay, we have the statue, votive tablet, inscription surrounded by pottery shards. So it appears that the site was not disturbed, the statue was not disturbed at all. So since that I think the head is missing, maybe because of erosion, natural erosion. Okay, so this is the first statue. It's not complete, but it is in a good state of preservation. Not complete, but in the original position. So this is located at the southern part of the structure, the southern niche. So there are four flight of stairs into the projected niche over here. And then at the western part of the site, we discovered another statue. Okay, this statue is not in a very good state of preservation, but it is in its original position. So most part of it has already disintegrated, but we found the lower portion of the torso, the right arm, and the leg lah, I mean in cross leg position, as well as the lotus throne. Okay. So we discovered two statues which are not complete. They are slightly smaller than how to say? They are slightly smaller than life size lah. Okay. Now, when we go to the northern niche of the site, as we were excavated, we thought that we are going to discover another headless statue. However, as we were cutting through the soil, we discovered something. There appeared to be a head over here, and the head appears to have fallen to the front. And when we remove the head, it appears to have been a complete Buddha statue, okay, as compared to the first two that we discovered in 2023. So the Buddha statue had a very clear drapery. It is in a meditative sitting position. And when we look over here, the Padmasana, the lotus throne is very clear. Okay, you can see the drapery, the sitting position, the sitting posture is very clear. And then when we discovered the head, we restored the head back to the body, and this is what we found. The first complete Buddha statue ever discovered in the Bujang Valley. Well, there were several Buddha statues which were discovered, for instance, in Kampung Pengkalan Bujang, several clay Buddha statues, but they were very small, and there is nothing we can make out from the iconography because they were crudely made. There is one Buddha head discovered in Kampung Sungai Mas, but they were discovered when they were digging for ditch. So the contact is not clear and the head was broken. So this is the first complete Buddha statue, life-size, discovered in the Bujang Valley. Okay, and it is made of stucco. Also first time that we discovered a stucco object in the Bujang Valley. And what we did, so this is a statue in several posts. What we did, we brought the statue back to USM. So it is being preserved in USM right now. Okay. So alongside with the statue, we also discovered inscriptions. Okay, in the year 1937, Quaritch Will conducted an excavation in Bukit Choras and he discovered an inscription. So the inscription is currently being preserved in the Asian Civilization Museum, Singapore. However, the inscription is not a very good piece lah. The characters are not clear and it is broken in several sites. So it is not a very remarkable piece that they are preserving. However, the inscription that we discovered is this one. So this is Bukit Choras 2 discovered at the southern part of the stupa with the first statue. It was discovered near to the lab of the statue, and it contains a mantra known as the Sagaramati Paripicha mantra. It is written in a Southeast Asian Brahmi script which can be dated from the 7th to the 8th century CE. It is on a piece of small stone carved on three sides. Okay, so the inscription is currently being preserved in University of Science Malaysia. This one was discovered in the year 2023, September. In 2024, June, we discovered another inscription. Okay, another inscription in 2024. It contains the same thing, Sanskrit language, and the Sagaramati Paripricha mantra, and this was discovered at the northern part of the temple alongside with the complete statue. Okay, this one is a bit broken, but we can be able to read the inscription. Okay, and we also, this is the translation of the inscription that we have just done. Okay, so it contains a mantra from the Madhyamika sect. It's a Mahayana Buddhism thing. Okay. And then, aside, so for the Sagaramati Paripricha inscription, we have discovered two in the Bujang Valley, but one more was discovered in Kampung Bendang Dalam near to the Bujang River in 1937 by Quaritch Wales. And this one is also being preserved in the Asian Civilization Museum, Singapore. However, we have another two that we discovered. This one is discovered in Kampung Sungai Mas. Okay, it is in our collection right now, containing the Sagaramati Paripricha inscription. And this one is discovered in the Sungai Batu Archaeological Complex, also in our collection. So we have complete set of Sagaramati Paripricha. So out of 5 inscription, 4 is in our hand and 1 in Singapore lah. Okay. But the Singapore one is not so nice also because it is made of clay and the characters are not very nice as compared to the ones which is being preserved by us. Okay. Now, and we see that the paleography of the inscription, this is the paleography of the inscription, and the script shows local development. Before this, I didn't believe that the Brahmi script actually evolved in the Bujang Valley, but with the current discovery in the Bukit Choras archaeological site, we already have the evidence that the Brahmi script actually evolved in the Bujang Valley. You know, we can see the development of characters from different inscriptions containing the same content. Okay, having the same content. But of course, we need more data in order to confirm this. And we discovered other stuff also. We have the votive tablet, we have pottery shard, and we have an iron object. But one of the pottery, we saw when we did 3D scanning on them, there are characters on them. Okay, so this is also an inscription carved onto the pottery. But unfortunately, it is not complete. We need to conduct more excavation to retrieve more shards. Okay. And when we look at the building material of the Bukit Choras site, they are all locally sourced. For instance, the site is made of laterite blocks, and the laterite was actually quarried from the foothill of Bukit Choras. The stucco is made of lime, and the lime actually came from Bading and Gunung Keriang. The inscription is made of black shale, and black shale was available like less than 1 kilometer from Bukit Choras. So it appears that the Bukit Choras archaeological site is the materialization of Indian art by using local technology and local material. That is what we can be able to conclude. Now, what we can conclude from the discussion? Number one, aside from the economic center of Bujang Valley, you know, the kampungs, the Sungai Muda, Sungai Batu, and Sungai Bujang, there are local settlements which were located beyond the economic center, which is Bukit Choras. And when we look at the architectural features and the artistic features of the site in Bukit Choras, it does not confirm with what we discover in other sites in the Bujang Valley. It appears that different sites have different architectural features. Okay, for instance, we cannot compare Bukit Choras with Sungai Batu. They are totally different. Bukit Choras with Pengkalan Bujang, also different. So there is no regularity in terms of artistic features of the sites in the Bujang Valley. So it appears that the sites of Bujang Valley, different Hindu and Buddhist sites, they were built by different communities, influenced by different cultural influence. And also, based on the study of the building material, it shows the riverine coastal interconnectivity between the coastal community and the communities living in the interior part of the Malay Peninsula. Also, the interconnectivity between Bujang Valley and other coastal communities living in other parts of Asia also. And this had proven the maritime integration of people in Kedah, where the coastal societies here, they were active agents for the transmission of foreign ideas. Yeah. Now, the most recent discovery that we have is just like a few months ago, I think 2 or 3 months ago, where we conducted an excavation at the southern bound of Bukit Choras. Now, over here. So this is the first temple that we excavated, the one that you have seen. And over here, there is another mound. So between April to May this year, we began our excavation at the northern part of the southern mound. And this is the mound. And we excavated this area. Okay. And so as we started digging, we saw some well-preserved structure, but we were not sure regarding the function of the structure. So this is before excavation, drone image. Okay, this is the main structure, and the mound is over here. And this is after excavation. We finally discovered another structure located to the south of the main stupa. And however, we are not yet sure regarding the function of this structure. Okay, because it appears to have been a low platform there were several postholes, so the superstructure could have been made by perishable material. It could have, we need to complete the excavation in order to determine the actual function. So this is the site. Okay, so we have just excavated a small part of it. So another photo. So over here, not yet excavated. So it is a low platform over here. And at the eastern part of the temple, we discovered something quite weird. We saw a piece of stone slab surrounded by laterite blocks, and we are not quite sure what is the function of this stone slab. Maybe it is a platform to wash feet or something. We are not sure. And we also discovered iron spike and iron hinges. So this kind of suggests that the superstructure was made of wood. Okay, because they have hinges also. And the most important discovery is when we excavated the eastern part of the temple, we saw something just like a rectangular piece of stone. As we went deeper, it looked like an inscription. Okay, so you saw this, you see this rectangular piece of stone, and finally we discovered another inscription in Bukit Choras archaeological site, and when we cleaned the inscription, finally a beautiful inscription which can be dated from the 6th to the 7th century CE, and it contains a Yete mantra formula, written in the Pallava script, Sanskrit language. So in 3 years' time, we had discovered 3 inscriptions, 1 inscription per year. Whenever we excavate, we would discover this kind of stuff. And Bukit Choras, so far, we have only excavated 30% of the whole site, and we have already made this kind of discoveries. So the most important thing right now that we can be able to conclude about Ancient Kedah, Ancient Kedah had a very diverse economy. Okay, aside from functioning as a center for trade, they also produce local goods. They also have rainforest product. And as well as a settlement pattern, it is not a centralized spot, but it is a network of settlement where each settlement would have their own specific economic functions. And when we want to talk about the local coastal communities, they were active agents for the transmission of foreign ideas and cultures. And different segments of the indigenous communities would have different level of acceptance towards Indian culture, and their level of acceptance would depend on the environment, they would depend on the socio-economy, they would depend on the location of their settlements. And the most important thing is that Ancient Kedah was interconnected with other economic and cultural hubs in the region. And the way forward for our research is we need to continue our excavation in the Bukit Choras archaeological site, and we plan to expand our research. We'll be conducting another excavation in Sungai Batu, as well as other few more archaeological sites that we have just detected. And we hope by employing this new approach of archaeological interpretation, we can get a deeper insight regarding the history and culture of Ancient Kedah, not just from the artistic point of view, but regarding its interconnectivity with the outside world and how the environmental factor led to the rise and fall of Ancient Kedah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khaw. We want to thank you for taking, bringing us through this, the rise of Kedah in the 7th century after the polities were moving south from southern Thai, and also the exciting discovery at the Bukit Choras. I think we would use the rest of the time for Q&A. We would open for Q&A for any one of you who may want to ask Dr. Khaw some questions, as well as maybe to comment. But before you do that, please do identify yourself. Tell us who you are, and then keep your question to be short and simple. Thank you.
Hello, I am Florence.
Yes,
Yeah.
Florence, please. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to ask the speaker. Just now, there was one about referring to the Lembah Kedah as the coastal area, and doctor has shown us the demography and so on. yeah, how does this relate to your reframing ancient Kedah as a regional polity, like the not demography, I'm sorry, the topography of it. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your question. Number one, it became a regional polity because of the geomorphological features of the area, actually. Why? Because along the coast of the time Malay Peninsula, there were several rivers. Yeah, there were several rivers. We have the Perak River, we have the Klang River, we have the Perlis River. But ancient Kedah was chosen to become the center for trade because of the favorable development, the favorable coastal configuration. In order for any port to become a favorable to become a center for trade, they need to have three characteristics. Number one, it need to have to be a bay. Number two, you need to have a sandy coast, and number three, you need to have clusters or islands surrounding the bay. Okay, and Ancient Kedah is the only coastal area with that kind of characteristics, aside from the geostrategic position. When we go to the Klang River, during that time, it was actually a swamp. Perak River was a swamp. Perlis River was also a swamp. So with a swampy area, it is very hard for any society to develop it into a port. So the rise of Ancient Kedah was not only due to its geostrategic collocation, but mainly was due to the geomorphological features. And that is why it is very important for us to study the paleo environment before we study the archaeological site. Through our understanding of the paleo environment, we can be able to determine the location of archaeological sites. For instance, Bukit Choras is currently located 8 kilometers from the coastline, but based on our most recent research, it shows that before the 14th century CE, it was actually located less than 3 kilometers from the coastline. So it was actually accessible from the sea. So archaeological research is not just about digging the site, but understanding the environment.
Oh, I see. Thank you. That's very clear.
Thank you. Forrest Craig is from Chinese Studies, University Malaya. Anyone else? Any question or comment? We have, there's a question asking any book relating to tonight's talk, the content of tonight's talk. This is on the chat.
Okay. Well, the thing that I presented today, it is something very new. Actually, we are in the process of writing. We have several research papers. We have a book actually regarding Asia Kedah published by USM Press, but they are mostly for lay people. So I'm working on something more detailed on the matter. But you guys can buy it from USM Press. It is it is a bilingual book on Asia Kedah for lay people, not for tourists. But right now we are working on a more detailed work regarding the synchronicity between the paleo environment, the human agency, and the regional development, which led to the emergence of Ancient Kedah.
Yeah, thank you. Any other question? Dr. Khaw, if I may just ask you, Dr. Nasha, I was just looking at all these inscriptions that you found and also found over the years by different early archaeologists and so on. Why are the inscriptions that you found are always in the shape of a kind of slab? Why such slab and not, say, a bigger slab and so on?
Yes, great question. Thank you so much. Sure. Now, do you know that this kind of inscription, we only discover them in Kedah? Nowhere else. It appears to have been a localized practice only in Kedah. So what they do, they are going to carve the inscription in a wedge-shaped stone, and they would bury it underneath the structure to consecrate the site. And this is the practice only unique to this area. And the content of the inscription, it contains two things. Number one, the Yete mantra, and number two, the Sagara Mati Paripricha. And the usage of Sagara Mati Pricha is only in Kedah. So we have just discovered this localized practice of burying wedge-shaped inscription underneath the structure. So this is something, this is our new discovery from our studies. So it is a localized practice. So it appears that there is a localization of Buddhist tradition in Ancient Kedah through the practice of these inscriptions.
Thank you. Interesting. Very interesting. Any question? Any other question? Helen Ting asked Dr. Khaw, thank you for the very interesting presentation. Are there any of your archaeological evidences that tells you more about the indigenous population?
Okay, thank you. Now, the material culture of the indigenous population is reflected in several things that we discovered. Then number one is in terms of the pottery. Okay, the pottery are 100% locally made. Okay, and it appears to have been an indigenous technology. Number two, the iron smelting sites, although they use Indian technology, but I believe that the manpower could have been indigenous manpower, because they use local materials. Yeah, they use local iron ores, so it must have involved local workers. Number three, the bead making workshops. Okay, the beads were made by using bead making technology from Arika Medu, southern India. But the raw material used to make the beads were actually broken Persian glass. So it appears that the local people, they had the initiatives of smelting the broken Arab glasses and turn them into glass beads. Okay, so when we want to talk about indigenous technology in the Bujang Valley or the indigenous people, there is no such thing as a purely indigenous technology because it is a hybrid between foreign technology and local material. So the process of producing local goods, the construction of temples, they were the result of collaboration between foreign artisans, foreign traders, local chieftains and local manpower. Yeah, so when we want to talk about something indigenous, purely indigenous, then it is a bit hard for us to find. But the temples, the presence of the temples, the local material used to build the temples, it reflected upon the effort of the indigenous workers to construct them. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? You can also type your questions onto the chat box.
Can I just make a follow-up question of my
Yeah,
question?
please do, Helen. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Khaw.
Yeah.
I'm more thinking in terms of the old theory of, Kedah being ancient of the Indian people. It's true that we can say there could be trace of localization, but to what extent we can argue against the old theory, the old proposal that they were settled people from India, and they could have evolved too in terms of how they made the beads or they made the pottery and so on.
Now, regarding the old theories, regarding on Ancient Kedah, actually there are three main theories discussing about the cultural features of Ancient Kedah. We have the colonization theory, the indigenization theory, and the trade enclave theory. The colonization theory proposed by College Wales said that the people of Ancient Kedah were fully Indianized. It was in fact a colony of Indian traders and Indian settlers. That is theory number one. And then number two, we have the indigenization theory suggested by Alastair Lamb and supported by Nick Hassan Suhaimi and Zulkarnain Ramli by UKM. So it compares Ancient Kedah with Java and Angkor. They said the people here, they were, so the Indian culture went through the process of indigenization. So the local people, they adopted several elements of the Indian culture and then they turn it into their own culture. So just like we have the Indo-Javanese art or the Indo-Khmer art. So theory number two. Theory number three mentions that the Hindu and Buddhist sites in the Bujang Valley were simply left by traders and the local people were not touched by Indianization. So the local people, they continued with their animistic beliefs, and the Indian or the foreign traders, they had their own settlements. So we have that three main theories, but I believe that all three theories, it is an oversimplification of history because they simply paint the whole area with the same color. They didn't take into account regarding the presence of different economic and population centers. So I say that within Bujang Valley, there were three separate population centers, and each population center is defined by the specific economic activities. And different sites would be built by different communities. There is no regularity in terms of the artistic features and everything. So maybe there is one site built by the traders, another site built by the local communities. For instance, the big making industries. So maybe we have some workshops they were founded by traders. Some workshops were founded by Panama chieftains. So there is no regularity. It is a mixture of everything within the Bujang Valley, and that is reflected upon the archaeological findings that we have. There is no two temples in the Bujang Valley which shows similarity. It appears that different temples shows their own specific, their own distinct features, you know. So I say that the cultural features, the economy of Ancient Kedah is extremely complex. We should not view Ancient Kedah as a single cultural unit, but it is an area where different cultures were being practiced at the same time. And this is not surprising at all, owing to the position of Ancient Kedah in the middle of the trade route located in the coastal areas. So traders from India, from China, from Arabia, and other parts of Southeast Asia were free to come and stay for 6 months or more, you know, while waiting for a monsoonal change. Yeah, so we should not view Ancient Kedah from the cultural perspective only, but we should look at them from the perspective of a center for trade, where it is a metropolitan, where people come and go continuously. It is a place where there is a continuous movement of goods, ideas, and people.
I don't disagree with what you have said. Actually, I read that in one of the work of Anthony Reid,
Yep.
that at the beginning of 1900, the total population of the whole peninsula is about 500,000, and it includes Patani. So from that point of view, and another historian, I think, had said that given the climate and also the geographical situation in Peninsular Malaya, it is quite sparsely populated.
True.
So if you see from this point of view, it is also possible that if, let's say, there were Indians who came and settled down and they became sort of, you know, a localized community over time. I mean, I'm just speculating, but based on what I know and how to sort of understand what you have discovered. So it is more like there isn't a, how do you call it? Something that confirm the presence of so-called indigenous population, right? And perhaps it could be, you know, orang asli, or perhaps it could be something else. And who are they and what type of culture they have actually is an open question, right? I don't.
Yes, actually regarding the identity of the indigenous people in Ancient Kedah, if you are to ask me whether they are Malay or Asli, my answer is I don't know. In order for us to prove that, we need to discover an inscription written in local language. Almost all of the inscriptions that we have are written in Sanskrit language. You know, we need something written in Malay or in Khmer, anything. So we have yet to discover such inscription, and the identity of the indigenous population here is still a mystery. The point of departure for all argument in archaeology is archaeological findings. And until we have such finding, then it is an open question. You're right.
Oh, thank you. Let us move on to other questions. By the way, Dr. Helen Ting is the new editor-in-chief of the MBRAS. So yeah, any other questions?
Okay, good evening, Dr. Khaw. This is Josephine here. Okay, may I know what's the reaction of the local government about this new archaeology site?
Well,
and does the local government given any assistance towards this project?
Well,
Thank
we
you.
have received lots of assistance, not just from the local government, the federal government, of course, give us the funding. The local government also assisted us with the project. In fact, we are getting funding to do the excavation from the state government. Okay, so during our excavation, the assistance came in the form of administrative assistance. They would send their people to conduct the excavation with us. You know, the local committee was supporting the work also. So yeah, I'm happy to tell all of you that we are getting support from the state government, as well as from the federal government, from the private ventures, as well as from the local committees.
Good, thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear about it.
Yeah. So the site is well taken care of. We are not even worried that somebody is going to loot the site, because the site is surrounded by a Malay village, and the local communities are helping us to maintain the area. They will just check on the site from time to time. They would text us if there's any problem.
Thank you, Dr. Ong, for that question. Any other questions?
Dr. Khaw, I'm Lee Kam Heng. Just a simple question. From your research, from the excavation, any evidence, artifacts to suggest agriculture, food supply for the settlements? Yeah,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The thing about the coastal areas of the time Malay Peninsula, we lack the wet rice cultivation. We don't have wet rice cultivation, so we are not sure where the food came from. Maybe for the indigenous people in the Bujang Valley, they could have had some small scale agriculture. They could have had hunter gathering, but I think for the foreign trader, they may have to import their food. It is similar like Malacca also. Malacca had to import their rice from Java, and Thailand. So I think for Kedah, they may have to import their food to sustain the population. Based on the research of Jane S. Allen, they say that the area of Bujang Valley cannot be able to sustain more than 50,000 people at one time. The population must be very very small, because of the lack of food, because we don't have the means to support that big of population. So it could have been small coastal communities where traders, they cannot stay here for long also,
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Khaw.
Thank you, Prof. Lee. We have another question from Florence, Dr. Craig. Is there any possible reasons for the localized practice of burying those inscribed slabs under the buildings?
No, we don't. We are not quite sure. We can't answer that yet, because we just came up with this hypothesis recently, with the discovery of the 3 new inscriptions. So we believe that different coastal communities would develop their own local practices, and the cultural features of these local practices were dictated by the environment, by the economy, etc. So how the practice evolved, we don't have the data for that yet. And that's why we need to conduct more excavations, in the future. And unfortunately, most of the excavation before the year 2006, they don't really focus on the stratigraphy. They don't fully focus on the cultural matrix. It is not very scientific. So the archaeological research in Bukit Choras right now, we are really focusing on the small stuff, on the cultural layers, on the association between artifacts. So it gives more value to our interpretation, not just focusing on the artifact, but the association with other things also.
I see. Thank you.
I have a question. Maybe this is not so much on the Bukit Choras, but I noticed that in your earlier slides, you mentioned about iron smelting.
Yes.
There are a lot of iron smelting. I was meant to understand that. How come you have so much of iron smelting operation? Was that a part of a form of trade, or was it what were they doing with so much of iron iron ore or whatever that was?
Okay, for the nature, there are 2 types of economic centers for when we look at the maritime Southeast Asia as a whole. There are 2 or 3 types of economic center. Number 1, there are economic center which just focus on long distance trade. They don't produce their own products. It is just trade. So they would take commodities from elsewhere and they will resell that commodity. It is something like Malacca. Malacca was like that, And we have ports which, aside from engaging in long distance trade, they produce their own food. So that is something like Ayutthaya, like Ayutthaya or Sungai Berantas. But for Ancient Kedah, we call it a port industry. A port industry. So it is an area where they conducted trade, but at the same time, they produced their own product. And they were able to produce their own product due to one thing only, because of the availability of natural resources. So coincidentally, Ancient Kedah, aside from having a good coastal configuration, Ancient Kedah also had iron ore located near to the coastline. Okay, so the iron ore in Sungai Batu, near to the foot of Gunung Jerai, they big deposit of iron ore, and in ancient time, it was located near to the coastline. So when traders arrived to the coastal areas, they were able to detect the iron ore, and they were able to directly smelt the iron on the coastal areas, producing iron ingots to be exported elsewhere. So I believe that due to the availability of the natural resources, it led to the emergence, to the development of iron smelting site. And that happened somewhere between the 3rd to 5th century CE. And as I mentioned earlier, in the 3rd to 5th, 6th century CE, there was an intensification of cultural and economic exchange from India, between India and Southeast Asia. And the expansion of Indian technology happens in synchronicity with the expansion of Indian culture in religion, somewhere between the 5th century CE. So we can see that with the arrival of Hinduism and Buddhism, the Indians also brought in the iron smelting technology. And that is when we see the emergence of iron smelting technology in the Bujang Valley, alongside with trade and as well as the Hindu and Buddhist religion. It all happened at the same time due to the interconnectivity between Bujang Valley with India.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Any other question?
Hi, Dr. Khaw. I'm Anu here.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah,
It's good
nice
to
to
see you
meet you
again.
again.
I remember you
nice
already.
to meet you again.
Yeah.
Dr. Khaw, I just have this curiosity. During the excavation process,
Yes.
you have found many civilization materials like the potteries and all that. I was just wondering, did you manage to also find any burial ground or any preservation for burial stuff to show civilization? Yeah.
Yeah, surprisingly, we have not found a single piece of human remain in the Bujang Valley. 150 years of excavation, 170 years of research in Bujang Valley, and not a single piece of human remains. And that is quite, so maybe the burial tradition the local burial tradition was different. Maybe they cremated their remains, or maybe they simply send it out to the sea, but we don't find any. And even if they buried the remains, the soil in Bujang Valley is quite acidic. So I don't think that any human bones can last for more than 200 years. So it is quite unlikely that we are going to find any human remains there, unless we have some tombstones. But most of the tombstones are dated after the 17th century CE, So for now, the things that I presented, those are the only things that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have a few more minutes because I think we have detained the call for so long now. If anyone has any question? No? Well, if none, then I think we have all learned something from this talk by Dr. Nasha Rodziadi Khaw, and I think we have learned so much from it. Actually, this is very exciting. I'm sure you agree with me. And shall we all thank him in the usual manner? Of course, we are all online now. So you can't really hear us clapping. Nonetheless, thank you so much for this. Yeah, and we wish you the very best in your future digging, digging at the site and other sites as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to tonight's talk. We would contact you again. We will send out other notices, but sincerely hope that some of you may decide to sign up as a member too. I've been talking about this as a secretary of the society. So once again, thank you so much. We were going to close the site soon, the meeting soon. Yeah, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.